Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Denny. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. I recently finished a PhD in medical ethics, and my focus is in women's health. Through the years, I have worked as a campus minister. I have taught girls in high school and also coached cross country and track. So, my kind of field of research has a lot to do with young women and also young men, and just the experiences that we have growing up and how those form us, and also then some of the hiccups and the challenges that we come up against in that time of our lives. So, what I wanted to focus on today was the scripture that says, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Do not submit again to the yoke of slavery." And in so many ways in each of our lives, I think there can be this temptation that we start to see the mirror reflected back to us of our wounds, our maybe traumas we've experienced, maybe a sin that we're just stuck in and that we're really struggling to get out of. And I think one of the ploys of the enemy is to get us stuck, right? And so, what does Christ really mean when he says, "For freedom, Christ has set us free"? Because I think when you're in those places of difficulty, it can be really tempting to think that he's not there or that maybe he's hiding his face. And the reality is that he's given to us in the circumstances of our lives everything that we need. And so, one thing I want to encourage each of you today is to consider what are the places that I myself, right, myself included, what are the places that I'm struggling to trust that my Father is good? Because those are the places where I need to allow myself to sit with Him. And when I say sit with Him, I don't mean it's just like a quick cup of coffee once a year and then I go on my merry way. I mean, legitimately, day to day, that there's a real invitation from Him. But He is a good Father, He never forces, and He is always so patient. So He's inviting us, can you make time to sit with me? Can you make time to actively show your trust in me by allowing me to work and move in your life? But in those places, right? Because I think a lot of people struggle. They might just say, "Well, we'll just pray about it." And absolutely, we need to pray about these things. And in prayer, the Lord brings up a lot. Sometimes He brings up a word. Sometimes He brings up an image. Sometimes He gives us the happy-go-lucky feelings. But sometimes we feel nothing. So too in those times, it doesn't matter what comes up. The call that He gives to us is to remain faithful, to in all things give thanks, to offer up our petitions to His heart, knowing that He hears everything that we offer to Him. And especially in those places, and this is a struggle of mine, but especially in those places that we feel like He's not listening or He's not moving, we need to hit that like the hammer hitting the rock. We just keep hitting and hitting and hitting until that water gushes forth. But in that place, one thing that I've found that people often struggle with is that either A, they don't see anything happening and so they give up, or B, they stay kind of stuck in the spiritual realm and they forget that we're also physical beings, right? We're physical creatures. So my space of research has a lot to do with young women and their cycles, right? Their cycles of fertility. So in my work, I've done a lot of research into how does a young woman's emotions change as she goes through her cycle. And in a lot of ways, right, as we know that at the end of a woman's cycle, when her progesterone drops off, right, that can trigger this sort of emotional responses where she can feel more overwhelmed. It's not that she's crazy, right, but that it's that biochemically she's going through these different adjustments and that maybe her like typical mechanisms to kind of get through a situation, she doesn't feel like she's as strong there. And this is where we're invited, and a lot of my work comes from John Paul II, but this is where we're invited to enter into what's called integration. So integration, right, it's on that spiritual level where we do need to be leaning into prayer consistently, right? That's a discipline. It's a habit. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I don't want to do it, and we show up and we do it anyway, especially when it's hard. But it's also this practical, right? I get to know myself. So myself as Sarah Denny, what are my weak points? When I am feeling sick, right? Or I'm feeling tired, or all of the above, right? I'm going to be more vulnerable, but that doesn't mean I'm defeated. I might still make mistakes, and in those moments, then I ask for forgiveness. But I need to not give up in the battle, also in the practical. Because if He's calling us to be saints, right, then the reality is that sainthood for each of us is available to us. I don't have to fly to Timbuktu to go become a saint. My call to be a saint is right here, right now, the very people that are in front of me. So, how can I go from this place of being aware of my struggles, my insecurities, my flaws, my weaknesses, my sin, and move into a place of freedom? And the reality is that that is a day to day choice in and through the real circumstances present to me, in and through the people that come in front of me, some of whom I love to talk to, and some of whom are really annoying, right? So too our call remains to love, right? That is our vocation. Our vocation is very clear. It is holiness, it is love, It is offering of ourselves in these moments. And I would argue that the temptation for us, especially I've seen with young adults, is that we can be so stuck, and they often call it navel gazing, right? We can be so stuck that we just look down at our belly button and I just can't look up. And the Lord's like, would you please pick up your head? Like, look right in front of you. That's where I am. Yes, I'm within you, but I'm out here. And so I think for us, if I could offer any words of advice, it would be this: to come to understand, and in a sense, we have to respect that we are creatures that are both biological and spiritual. And that's a beautiful thing, that we're both. So there's this integration. So if I want to grow in healing, if I want to grow in freedom, then number one, God is God and I am not. And so I don't control the healing. I put myself in a place to receive it. I ask for prayer when I need it, but also practically, if I need to go to counseling, that's something that I seek out. But then I also keep moving, right? Because the enemy wants nothing more for us than to get stuck. We get stuck in our own thought processes, right? We can get stuck in, well, how is he going to heal this? Or this is impossible for him to break. And it's like, it's not our business to understand the ins and outs of what God does, because it's God, right? So we need to allow him to come into those places. But I would argue that we allow him to come to those places by showing up to our lives. Stop the navel gazing. Stop the places where we're like, he can't come here. He heals us even as we sleep. I mean, that's who God is. He's outside of time, he's outside of space, and he's way bigger than all these things that we look at in their mountains, right? And if he tells us that if your faith were the size of a mustard seed, you would look at this mountain and say, move, and it would move, then we have to believe that. And sometimes that looks like you just getting out of bed in the morning and you want to get stuck in this thought pattern, and you're like, not today, Satan. And you keep moving. And the reality, y'all, is that we're not shooting for perfection in the sense of like, okay, well, today I went through and I didn't get stuck here or do this thing. No, 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 no. What we're shooting for is love. And what the way that we love is by learning to allow the Lord to love us. We can more fully love ourselves, but it should always pull us out of ourselves to love another. And in so many ways, he puts these people and these situations, and sometimes difficult ones, in front of us so that we are pulled outside of our own thought processes, right? Outside of our own habits. Because suddenly, I'm sure you've experienced this. You're going about your day, you're kind of getting stuck in this thought or this, frustration or whatever, and then someone needs you and you go and you help them, and then you come back and you're like, wait, what was I so worried about before? Oh yeah, like that's actually not a big deal. So in other words, I'm saying that in so many ways, freedom is, yes, it's about the daily work, the habit of we have to be putting ourselves in the place of the Spirit. We need to be praying. But then we also need to go outside and live our lives, right? Our God is a God of playfulness. He's a God of simplicity. So break that stuff off by choosing to say, even if I don't feel today, Lord, like I'm free, I'm going to live today in the truth that I'm free because I'm your beloved daughter, I'm your beloved son, right? That is what's important. So I encourage you, wherever you are, I pray that at the end of this video, just take a moment. Think about those things that you feel stuck in. And I want you to see yourself putting them in the heart of Christ. You put them there, you leave them there, and you say, blessed be your name, Lord. And then you leave. You go out, you love the people in front of you, you go for a run, you go for a bike ride, you go for a hike. I don't care what you do, but go do something. And realize that the beauty of the invitation of faith with Christ is the both and, where he comes in and he heals us, but then he calls us forth in love. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Do not submit again to a yoke of slavery.